Can you all see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. It's doing some weird flashy thing that will give me a stroke. Is it flashing? What you all can see is
No.
okay. Well, it's just me then. I'll just that will be fine. Let's, okay. All right, we'll wait just a few more minutes till 9:35. Right. Let's go. All right. So I am recording, so I remembered this time. First of all, let's start. Actually, I'm going to go back to where I can't see people, but I can see the comments. Does anybody have any questions about the cultural assignment? I got a couple emails that made me think it's confusing in that this is not a group project. So you are in a group only because those are the people that when you submit your paper, rather than every single person in the class watching every other person's presentation, which would really take up a lot of everybody's time, we're just going to have a small group that you have to watch each other's. You're not working with them in this process. Kylie, do you have a question?
Yeah. Do we have to pick the same like cultural group as them too, or no?
No.
Okay.
No. The
Okay.
only relationship is they're going to watch your presentation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Good question, though. That's so yeah, that's it. I've just like narrowed down the amount of people who you have to spend time watching, and they have to spend time watching. So if anything else like that comes up that I didn't anticipate, just send me an email. I'll try to if it's a, you know, I knew we were having class today, so that's why when I got those emails, I thought I'll just bring it up. But if it's something else, I'll send out an email if it's a question that I'm thinking other people may have. So, and over this weekend, I'm going to try, I don't want this to get confusing. Because you do have a group project. If you look down on the syllabus, your final project is the ethical situation, I forget what it's even called, where you are going to do an actual group project where you're working with other people to do a presentation and group project. So I wanted to go ahead and get those groups set up. You've got some time, and we're actually going to take one whole class period where we're not going to meet at all. The idea being that gives you that class time where you could conceivably get with your group. It's kind of built in. You all should have this blocked off on your calendar to work on the group project. So I don't think I'm in any rush for it. I like to get things out a little early, but I don't want to confuse things with this. So I may go ahead and put those groups together and then wait until we turn this assignment in before I actually blast it out. But anyway, I'm kind of talking out loud. So with no further questions about that, we shall go on. Okay. All right, we're going to talk about older adults. And you may have noticed if you've been a slave to the syllabus, which we always encourage, but then it changes. So I've kind of moved things around a little bit. Some things just because I wasn't prepared for what was coming up first. So we're going to go backward in order of age. We're going to do older adults, then we're going to do young adults and middle age, then we're going to do children. And part of that was because we kind of lost a class in the middle of things, and then we're shortened because of the holiday and just the end of class. So I wanted to kind of had to eliminate, you know, I don't want to say the fluff, but I had to make some decisions about what would stay and what would go. So today we're going to talk about older adults and bereavement, but mostly their own impending terminal illness or death. So what we consider older adulthood, lots of terms, you know, elderly, older adult, aged, but the term used in the 2007 census for a person in older adulthood, individual 65 or older. So that's kind of what we're talking about now. That age group, 65 years or older, makes up about 12.6, probably by now 13% of our total population. And it is, as you've probably heard and discussed in other classes, it is the largest growing portion of our population. It's, you know, what they call the graying of America. And it's the, you know, we talk about the baby boomers. It's that group of babies born after the Second World War, the baby boom. And I am a baby boomer. We're now growing into adulthood. I'm just barely a baby boomer. So nonetheless, I'm not 65, but I am still a baby boomer. So it's that group of people that as they have grown, you know, as time has gone on and that group has aged, it's just the biggest section of people, and they're entering into that well over 65 and older in some cases now. The baby boomer age, and the group, you know, Gen X and all of those others that are coming up behind are just not as big. The baby boomers themselves did not have as many children. So, and you know, once you reach that age, once you hit 65, again in 2007, then you could kind of figure your average life expectancy from then was about 18.6. So maybe even 19 or 20 years at this point. So once you hit 65, you could figure you know, maybe you were gonna have another good 20 years, give or take, of life left. So that's very different than what it would have been even 50 years ago, when, you know, people would retire at 64, 65 and really didn't look forward necessarily to that long of active life. That's why you have a lot more people, especially those you know, those baby boomers, staying in the workforce. You know, they hit 65, they could retire, but they just don't, because they're still feeling good, they still want to work, so they're still out there in jobs, you know, and working, and which, you know, kind of doesn't wreak havoc, but it alters our, you know, then you have this new group of people, millennials or whatever they are, coming into the workforce not able to find jobs. That's a whole other topic, but that's why, because those aged older adults are living better, living healthier, and so they're working more into their older age. And that portion is what during the first half of the 21st century, so where we're at now. So they're rapidly entering into past 65. They're entering into the, you know, their upper 70s, 80s, more aged than even what this talks about. So one of the things we're going to talk about, because we're going to talk about when an older person starts to deal with their own mortality, or the mortality of those around them. And it just feels weird for me to say old age is 65 and over, but that's what Erickson said it was. And we're not going to go completely over Erickson's stage, but because I have a feeling that in some social work class somewhere you've already had this, and so we're not going to dwell on the whole thing, but I am going to talk about specifically when you look down at the old age, 65 to death, the you know, Erickson talks about the stages, there being particular conflicts and then particular resolutions or a virtue that comes about during that time. That is the work of that particular age group. So in old age, it is integrity, the integrity of the person versus despair. And we'll talk more about the details of what that is, but you know, the outcome, the hopeful outcome is, if that is resolved in a positive way, would be wisdom. And we're working on existential identity, sense of integrity, strong enough to withstand physical disintegration. So what that means, the developmental task of old age is the ego integrity versus despair. And you know, what his thought was is, if you look back, if you get to that stage and you look back and you don't feel like you lived a productive life, or if you have guilt over what your life was about or anything that you've done in your life, and you just didn't accomplish anything or didn't accomplish what you really thought you would, shouldn't say didn't accomplish anything, but it could just be, you know, it could be someone that you look at and think just did everything and was, you know, from looking on the outside, wow, they did everything, they reached every goal. But it matters what that person, what was their goal, what was their thought on what their life was going to be. And when they get to that age and they look back, did they meet those goals? And if you don't feel like that you did that, that's when despair sets in. And that's when you see a lot of depression and just hopelessness in the elderly. Any of you all that are thinking of working in the geriatric field and working with people, older people, or the elderly, you know, this is something that you'll see and revisit. And it is a big task in that age, is making sense of the life that you're now looking back on. If you're successful in this stage, then you know, it's that you come to this wisdom, and it's that wisdom that enables you to then look back and see all of the things that you were able to do and assess appropriately the things that maybe you weren't able to do, and have some sense of acceptance and closure of those things. And in theory, then that takes us to a point where we're able to look at our own mortality, our own impending death, as a possible, just without fear. So, there's a lot to that, a lot more to it than we're going to cover here. But Erikson's developmental tasks are something that you've probably studied a little bit. If not, look out, you will. So when we talk about the elderly and this age group, breaking it down a little bit, the 5 leading causes of death, the things that, when we look at the younger age groups, you're going to see a lot different things that will kill them at a younger age. But when you're looking at 65 on, you'll see throughout this list, cancer and heart disease sort of trade. Cancer starts out the first, and about 74, 75, it flips, and heart disease becomes the number 1, with cancer being second. And then when you get into 85 and older, you see the rise of cerebral vascular disease. That's like strokes and brain bleeds, that type of thing. So what we're looking at, for the most part, as the biggest causes of death are cancer and heart disease and CVAs. So one of the things that's very different when you're looking at the older population is just their attitude. For the most part, can't generalize too much, but for the most part, the research suggests that they're much less fearful of death than the younger person, and lots of reasons for that. And they may accept that they accept death more easily because they have lived. If they've been able to complete that task that Erikson sets out and come to that point of wisdom where they are able to look back and see, it was good. I did what I needed to do. I feel good about what I did. Then there's more of an acceptance about it. You're a lot less likely to have that in a 30-year-old. They haven't gone through that process for the most part. And there's a socialization process that happens when you get to be, 70. I'm not going to say 65. That's just way too young. When you get to be 80, 85 years old, you have seen a lot of death. My dad is an example. He's 85 years old. He had 4 siblings. And so he's down to 3 now that are still living. He just has lost 2, lost my mother 2 years ago. He's lost, many cousins and couple, he has seen a lot of death, lots of his friends. There was a time there where he was going to the funeral home, once a week, but because you're at that age where all of the people that make up your family and your friend set start to die. So it's a socialization process, and it's just that repeated experience of the death of others. And sometimes they may view their life as less valuable. Maybe this is the set of people who didn't quite complete Erikson's task and who didn't quite get to the point of, like in number 1, where they accepted it, they lived a good life, they feel really good about it. That it's sort of the other side of that, where maybe I didn't, and I didn't do what I wanted to do, and they fall into that depression and helpless, and just may be more, just not be strenuous about their health and getting better. So when we're again talking about this age group, there are 4 specific needs when we get to the point of not just an older person, not just your grandma, who's, when they really get to that elderly stage where they start maybe to fail physically or mentally some, and are really going towards either a terminal illness or death. So one of the most important things is, there's 4 things. One of the most important is maintaining a sense of self, of who they are. And they want affirmation of their identity and who they are. So whether that is someone who has worked for many years in a particular field and garnered recognition in that field, you don't just all of a sudden want to think that you're done and you're no longer necessary in that field. So it's hard for people to pull away from their work identity and workplace. So that identity, if it's very strongly rooted in your profession, maybe that. If you are the matriarch of the family and your role was always to, or is always to, you prepare the Sunday dinner and the kids and grandkids come to you, your role is of that, that is your station, that you are sort of the one who rules that roost. And if you start to fail and you're not able to do that, letting go of that, turning your kitchen over to a daughter or a granddaughter is really hard. And how do you do that and maintain your sense of identity as the matriarch and the person in the house who normally does that? And how do you make that a smooth transition? Another way of kind of validating that sense of self is life review. And it's something that, at a certain age, you just start to kind of doing naturally, and remembering back and how you got to where you are and things that happened. And that can be a formal thing that you do. I tried to get my mom, I got her this book, God, 30 years ago, that asked questions. She had a really interesting childhood, and I really wanted her to capture some of that. So I got her a book that just asked questions that you fill out. That I wanted it for. She wasn't really interested in it at that time, and she never really did it. But that was a formal way of doing that. Sometimes it is. I may have been more productive if I had just, on occasion when we were just sitting around, just asked the questions. So, Mom, tell me, what was it like when you were? She was orphaned at 9. So what was it like when during that time when you weren't sure where you were gonna go, and get her to talk and tell me things that way. That would have been, that's the life review process. Sometimes it takes a little prodding, and sometimes it's the older person doing the prodding. And being able to pass on gifts. We think of, oh, I'll leave you that in my will, or Grandma, when you die, I want that silver set. But a lot of that happens and can happen when someone is still alive. That not in a morbid sense of, we know that is a sign of someone with some suicidal ideation as they start giving away valuable possessions. Not really talking about that. I'm talking about, if a grandfather has a beloved set of fishing rods, and at some point he wants to pass that on to his granddaughter or grandson, and does that in a way that, because he knows it still has meaning for him and wants to see that happen. So things like that, passing on the gifts could be wisdom and knowledge. So another one is just being reassured that their lives still have value. And it is, if you
sorry to interrupt, but we can't see the PowerPoint.
I'm sorry?
We can't see the PowerPoint. It's on
nobody see it?
It's on the same slide that says older adults. It hasn't changed. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but we're not seeing the other slides that you've been talking about.
All right. Well, that's no good. I wondered if it's doing some kind of strange. All right, let me. I'm just going to close out of it. Sometimes I get going, you have to yell at me. I had no idea. Oh my God, look at you all writing. The PowerPoint hasn't changed for me. Okay, never mind. Well, you didn't miss anything. It's just basically the same words I'm saying, so. There are no files at this location. What? For crying out loud. I don't know. It won't let me. That is so bizarre. I'm trying to fix it. Whoever. I'm Anna. Can you not hear me either?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. I hate to think I'm standing here in my bedroom talking to myself. There's not that many slides. So I'll try this one more time and then we're just gonna move on. Upload from my computer. It wants me to pick something out of Teams, which I don't want to do. Yeah, all right. Well, that ain't working. Oh, here it comes. Well, all right. It's not, that was very strange. At the beginning, remember I asked if it was flashing, there was a red flashing, the whole thing surround it was flashing red, but it was moving. And so anyway, well, I'll download the PowerPoint, but basically I still need to see it. So I'm gonna minimize. And we really were getting to the end, but I'm just gonna run through the last of it and then I'll explain what the next part of things are. So we were talking about 4 specific needs, and I think we just talked about maintaining sense of self, being reassured that your life still has value. Sorry, hang on. That your life still has value, and there's this whole concept of ageism, and for those of us who are younger, we may look at people who are older and discount them, that they're not able to do what we would consider be productive. It's an assumed incompetence. So in other words, when you look at somebody who's frail physically, or maybe is not able to get around well, they're in a wheelchair, there's this tendency to assume that they're incompetent. And you walk into a room and there's an elderly person in the bed, awake, and there's family standing around, and a doctor or a physician or a social worker will talk over them to their family. Well, how is he feeling today? Has he eaten today? And so there's this assumption that we can't talk to them because they're so frail and they're incompetent. And that's not necessarily always the case. There are times I always defer to the patient, to the person, and I talk to them. And at some point, if they're not able to hear or they're not able to comprehend, you'll pick that up, and they'll either say, they'll look at that person, they'll look at their spouse or their son or their daughter and sort of guide you to talk to them. But you don't want to walk in and talk over the top of somebody. Just assume that they can't answer your questions. The other thing at that age is, they've experienced so many losses. They've lost whatever their vocation was, whatever they did for a living, whatever brought them joy in that regard. Also, they've lost a lot of their bodily independence. They may not be able to. My dad, we're just kind of dealing with not being able to drive and not being able to go anywhere. It's a huge thing for him. So it's a little bit of an independence, now he's dependent on me to drive him. So that infuriates him. Losing loved ones, losing the people around you, losing sexuality. Older people, it's something that people in committed relationships still are sexual and sexual beings. Single people, as they age, are still visit any nursing home and talk to social workers that work in the nursing homes, and they will tell you that sexuality is something that it carries on and stays with you. But when you start to lose the physical ability for that, that's a pretty significant loss. So, any questions about that? And the final of those, or the third of those four things, is being able to participate in decisions that pertain to their life. And as much as they're able, they should be able to make those decisions. Some of the larger ones that they may be making at this point is, do I stay home in my own home, or do I go to a facility? Do I go somewhere where I can be taken care of? If I remain home, what kind of help do I need? And if someone is of sound mind, someone's able to make those decisions, they should be allowed to make those decisions. Now, sometimes, saying that, they don't always make the best decisions, and so then it gets a little tricky. But for the most part, where decisions can be made and they're able to make them, they should be allowed to make them, especially decisions that really affect their life and their day-to-day life. And when you get into, this person's in a nursing facility, or they're pretty debilitated, and those big decisions are now taken out of their hands, even be able to make small decisions. What do you want for breakfast? Do you want to plan your meals for the day? What do you want to eat? There's an activity this afternoon. Do you want to go? Rather than loading them up in a wheelchair, putting them on the van, taking them to the zoo. You may not want to go to the zoo. So being able to make some of those decisions. And finally, just receiving the appropriate and adequate health care. And, at this age, if an elderly person that's got some comorbidities, got some underlying illnesses, shows up in the ER, they may not be treated as aggressively. And maybe that's the appropriate thing, but it's hard to know. And you certainly don't want someone not treated adequately because an assumption has been made about their age and their life expectancy and all kinds of things. One of the things to remember then at that point is geriatric specializations. That's becoming a very big thing. We've always had maybe not always, but pediatricians and pediatric care that specialize in working with children and taking care of children. And we have specialists in all manner of things. Geriatric care, geriatricians are really just now starting to become a force in their own. And they are specialized in dealing with certain issues of aging and how medications work, particular illnesses that appear at certain ages. So those are four real specific things that the elderly need to live and to thrive into old age. So now the thing you cannot see, and I needed you to see, this is on, I've already put it on Blackboard as an assignment. So it is twofold. It is the remainder of your class today, and it is your quiz / assignment. So it is a video, approximately, I think about 50 minutes. It's a PBS video. It's really well done. They did a series not too long ago called Aging Matters. And so it was focusing on some of these issues for the elderly. This particular one is end of life. So there's a link to it in Blackboard. And if you have trouble with that, just email me and I'll send it to you. So we'd like for you to watch that video, watch that documentary. And then also in Blackboard, there is kind of a little assignment along with that. And what I've written here on the slide that you can't see, sometimes as a social worker, we work in settings where our code of ethics is not necessarily the primary code of ethics. And a prime example of that is the medical setting. I've worked in the medical setting for 30 years, basically. And you learn you are the square peg in a round hole. And sometimes what we are trying to do is very counter to what they are trying to do. And we're the ones that have to sort of figure that out and work around that. So when you watch this, I'd like for you to kind of be thinking of it or watching it with these things in mind. And one of the situations is going to talk about different people and introduce you to different situations. And there's probably going to be a couple that trigger some sort of ethical issue for you or question for you. So pick one and just want a page, not huge. And it doesn't really have to be APA style. Okay. I'm just make sure your spelling's good, your grammar's good, it's well written, but you don't have to for any of that. This is just out of your head. So what was the situation? Describe which of the situations that you're talking about and discuss how the decisions or the recommendations that the healthcare professionals made might run counter to social work ethics. And what would you do if you were a social worker in that setting? What might be some things that you could do to intervene in that? So now I'm going to back out of the PowerPoint and be here again. So that's the plan, was the plan for the day. We're going to have this beautiful PowerPoint, which I worked hours and hours on that you didn't get to see. And then we're going to disperse. You can watch that video right now if you want, since you've already blocked aside a certain chunk of time for this class. It is not going to be due until the end of the day on Sunday. So you have the weekend to do this on your own time and have that assignment in. So that's completely up to you. Any questions? All right, it's all in Blackboard. I'll put the PowerPoint on there. I heard a ding. Wait a minute, sorry. Oh Lord, I don't know. Is the page single space or double space? Use whatever you need. I'm looking for the content, okay? So if you can answer and get all that content in and give me some really good answers to those questions, then double space all you want. But I'm not looking like, oh, she didn't fill a whole page, so I'm counting off. Just put the information in there and make it substantial. And if you can do that in one page double space, then you are on track. That's kind of a non-answer, but that's what I got. Anything else? All right, I think you'll enjoy this video. It's really good. PBS does some really wonderful. We'll watch more as the semester goes on, but this one is really good. So, all right, I'm going to sign you off. And if you have any other questions, send me an email. Otherwise, first thing Monday morning, I'm going to get up and I'm going to read all of these fabulous things and grade them. So take care. Bye.
Have a good weekend.
You too.